Good morning, afternoon, or evening. How you doing today? Welcome to Mr. Morrow's algebra class. Today we are going to continue with percents, and we're going to talk about percent applications part 2. Very important skill. This is going to be used your whole life. And we're going to be learning how to find the percent, the part, and the whole. And that will all make sense after the lesson. Let's think about the main equation that we're going to use, okay? Whether we do it through an equation method that I'm going to teach you or the proportion method, we're still going to be reading word problems in the following format. And they're going to give it to you roughly, usually like this. Sometimes they'll add some words to try to confuse you, but the main body of every type of these problems is going to be what percent, now think about a percent, okay? Remember that we talked about percent already. That's what part out of 100. And when we're talking about a what, we're usually talking about an unknown. So an unknown is represented by a variable, and we're going to use the variable x. So what percent, okay, x is the what part out of 100, okay, so what percent of means multiply, or in other words, times. So what percent times, that's what of means. Of represents multiply. And you know, we're talking about multiply, so that's times. So what percent of times a whole, this is also right now an unknown. This is a whole. Remember when we've been talking about percents and fractions and decimals, those are all parts of a whole. Remember that 100% equals one whole. Okay? So let's go from the beginning. What percent, we're talking about x over 100, of times a whole, which we're going to call w, we don't know what the whole is yet, is, okay, is means equals. Okay, is means equals. So what percent, x over 100, of times a whole, w, is equals a part. And the part is also an unknown in this particular case, and we're going to call that p. Okay, so what percent of a whole is a part, and this should be a question mark here. What percent of a whole is a part? That's what we're going to be talking about. And with this equation, we can find, if you think about it, and we really analyze it, you can find the percent, the whole, and the part. And that's the whole goal of today's lesson. All right, let's get into it. There are two methods to solve these types of percent problems, okay? I really want you to listen to both. I want you to absorb both. And I want you to choose one that you like. Not the one that I like, but the one that you like, and master it, okay? Just use that all the time. Perfect it. So there's the equation method and the proportion method. Let's take a look at both. In the equation method, it's pretty simple. You're literally just going to replace words for algebraic symbols and operation symbols. So what percent of a whole is a part? Okay, well, what percent, x percent, times of a whole is means equals a part. How do I put that in equation form? X percent, remember we're talking about a part out of 100. So x over 100 of means times, a whole is the w, is means equals, a part is p. Okay? That's if we want to set up an equation. If we want to use the proportion, what percent of a whole is a part? Well, we're going to use n over 100, what percent, what part out of 100. So what percent, okay? And then that's going to be set equal to is over of. The is belongs to the part, and the of belongs to the whole. Okay? Now it's kind of hard to see how this is going to work like this without actual numbers. So let's look at some actual examples and decide for yourself which one you like. All right, let's first talk about the equation method. Again, we're going to replace the words of the problem with an equation and solve for the missing value. And remember that we're going to use the equation what percent, that's x over 100, of means times, a whole, which is w, equals p the part. So example 1, we're going to look at finding the part using the equation method. So we've got 20% of 80 is what number? Literally just fill in the blanks using the equation method. So 20%. You can't work with percent, so you have to convert that to a decimal, 2 places to the left. So 20%, 0.2 of means times of, so I'm going to use parentheses to denote multiplication. 20% of 80, plug in the 80, is means equals what number? There's your variable. I hope that makes sense. 20%, 0.2, of times 80 is equals what number? X. So now it's just simple solving an equation. 0.2 times 80 is 16, and 16 equals X. You're looking for a number, you got a number. You don't have to turn it into a percent because you were already given the percent. You're done. Let's look at the exact same thing but with the proportion method. In the proportion method, you're going to replace the words of the problem with a proportion and solve for the missing value. Remember that we're going to use n over 100 equals is over of, where n is the given percent. Okay, let's look at the exact same question. We know the answer already, but let's see how it works using the proportion method. All right, so we got 20% of 80 is what number? Okay, remember we're dealing with n over 100, so the given percent over 100 equals is over of. Is attached to the part, of is attached to the whole. Remember that. Okay, so 20% of 80 is what number? So the given percent, that's n over 100, equals my is, what's attached to the is? The what number? Over of. What's attached to the of? 80. And now we simply solve a proportion by cross multiplying and then solving for x. So when you cross multiply, you're going to multiply 80 times 20, and you're going to multiply 100 times x. So 80 times 20 is 1600, which equals 100 times x, which is 100x. You divide by 100. X equals 16. Another way to solve that proportion, okay, if you just want to isolate the variable, you could do it this way. N over 100 equals is over of. Since you have the x already here by itself, you can go ahead and simply multiply the 80 to the 20. So then you're going to have 1,600 over 100 equals x. Cancel the zeros. X equals 16. And that is the proportion method. Now, let's learn how to find the whole, and let's learn how to find the percent using both methods, and hopefully you can master one of them. All right, example 2, finding the whole. 20% of what number is 60? Okay, the equation method. For those of you who like the equation method, let's do it. So 20%, remember, got to convert it to a decimal, 0.2. Of means times. What number? That's my variable x. Is means equals 60. Okay, so I have 0.2 times x equals 60. Well, when I have a multiplication like this, I have 0.2 being multiplied to x. you cancel multiplication with division. So I'm going to divide 0.2 to both sides. Okay? That's going to leave me with x equals, let's do a little bit of math, 0.2 on the outside, 60 on the inside. Remember, the denominator always goes outside. Decimal to the right, decimal to the right. Bring it up so you don't forget it. 2 goes into 6 3 times. 0 and 0. See, even though I knew it, I like to show myself what I'm doing. That way I tend to make less mistakes. So I've got 300. And that is the whole. All right, let's try this in the proportion method. For those of you that like proportions. Okay, let's do it. Remember, we got percent over 100 equals is over of. All right. So I got 20% of what number is 60. So 20 over 100, that's my percent over 100. Now, you may ask, why don't you turn that into a decimal, Mr. Morrow? Why do you turn it into a decimal here, but not here? Well, you could have done it 20 over 100 on the equation side. And actually, now that I think about it, let's stay consistent. Let me go ahead and go back to this for a second. When we're dealing with percents, so that way we don't have to do too many conversions, just go ahead and represent 20% as 20 over 100 of what number is 60. Okay, you could do that. And then 20 divided by 100, that's 0.2 times x equals 60. So if you, I just skipped a step, and I do apologize for that. Okay, I do apologize for that. But you should set it up as 20 over 100, okay? All right. So that's why this is not going to become 0.2, because I have to set it up in the proportion method as a proportion, as a fraction. Okay. So 20 over 100 equals is over of. Well, what's attached to the is this time? 60. And what's attached to the of this time? What number? X. So again, we're going to have to cross multiply here. There's no shortcuts for this one. So that's why I always like to just teach the full entire long way of cross multiplying. That way it becomes easier and easier. So I'm going to cross multiply again. I'm going to go x times 20 equals 100 times 60. So 20 times x is 20x equals 100 times 60 is 6,000. I'm going to go ahead and solve for x. 20 is being multiplied to x. I cancel multiplication with division, so I'm going to divide 20 to both sides. Whatever I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. 20 divided by 20 is 1. I'm left with x, and that's going to equal, cancel the 0, that's 300. So x equals 300. Whether you do it the proportion method or the equation method, you're still going to get the same answer, as long as you do it correctly. All right, let's try to find the percent this time using both equation and proportion methods. All right, let's do the equation. Okay, what percent of 70 is 21? So let's just focus. What percent, x over 100, of means multiply times 70, drop the 70, is means equals 21. Okay? Now, remember we learned how to multiply fractions. Okay, we learned this for a reason. We're going to apply fractions, believe it or not, throughout your mathematical career. So we're going to have to perform some fraction work here to make our lives easier. Let's look at what we have here. X over 100 times 70. Don't freak out. Remember that 70 has a denominator of 1. And remember that when you multiply fractions, it's numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So x times 70 is 70x. 100 times 1 is 100. And that equals 21. Okay? Hope that makes sense. Remember that this 21 also has a denominator of 1. So go ahead and cross multiply. 1 times 70x is 70x. That equals 100 times 21 is 2100. Divide by 70. Divide by 70. X is going to equal 30%. As you go 7 into 210. 7 goes into 21 3 times. 7 goes into 0 0 times. And you've got 30%. How did you know to put a percent sign, Mr. Morrow? Well, think about it. They asked what percent. So that's what I was looking for, was the percent. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you've already figured out which method you like most. Let's practice a few more. All right. What percent of 12 is 2.4? What percent of 12 is 2.4? I'm going to first do it the equation method. In the equation method, what percent, x over 100, of times 12, drop the 12, is equals 2.4. Okay, a little bit nastier numbers, but that's okay. Don't freak out. Remember that this 12 is 12 over 1. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So x over 100 times 12 over 1. X times 12 is 12x. 100 times 1 is 100. And that equals 2.4. Remember that 2.4 is over 1. Cross multiply. 12x times 1 is 12x. And that's going to equal 100 times 2.4. And 2.4 times 100 is 240. How did I get that? Very easily. 100 times 2.4, 0, 0, 4. Skip a space, 0, 0, 2. There's one decimal, so move the one decimal, and that's how I got my 240. Or you can try to remember this trick. Whenever you're multiplying by powers of 10, so in other words, 10, 100, 1,000, okay, when you're multiplying by powers of 10, you can move the decimal to the right as many places as there are zeros. So, what does that mean? You can move the decimal to the right for as many places as there are zeros. If I have 7 times 10, that's going to equal 70. Why? Because I have a 7 here and there's a decimal here. How many zeros in 10? 1. So I move to the decimal to the right, 1 0. So that's 70. If I go 7 times, let's say, 10,000, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. So that's 7 point. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. Place my decimal, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be 70,000. So whenever you're multiplying by powers of 10, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, a million, a billion, nice even powers of 10, simply move the decimal to the right for as many places as there are zeros. Okay. So that's the equation method. Now let's do it the proportion method, because I promised I would do both, because some people are going to like one and others are going to like another way. So what percent of 12 is 24, or is 2.4, sorry. N over 100 equals is over of. So what percent, that's my unknown, that's my variable, N over 100, equals is, my is 2.4, over of, which is 12. I'm going to cross multiply. 12 times n is 12n. 100 times 2.4, remember what we just said. Got 2.4 times 100. I got 2 zeros. So 1, 2 to the right. So that's 240. Divide by 12. Why did I divide by 12? Just in case you didn't see that. I divided by 12 because 12 times n. This is multiplication. I cancel multiplication with division. So I divide by 12, and n will equal 20. Okay? And that's, of course, percent. So equation method or proportion method, you're going to have 20%. All right, next. 32% of 8 is what number? All right, let's do the equation method first. 32%, 32 over 100 of times 8 means equals what number? That's my variable. That's my x. Okay, don't stress out. 32 over 100 times 8 over 1 will equal 32 times 8. Okay, let's go ahead and do the math. 256. So that's 256 over 100 equals x. How do I solve for x? My division. So 100 into 256. 100 goes into 200 one time. Drop the 5, drop the 6, a subtraction. I got to add a decimal and drop a 0. 100 goes into 565 times. Drop a 0. Let me go ahead and put this over here so we have more room. 100 goes into 600, and this is a 2, sorry. 600, and that's 0. Okay, so 2.56. So x equals 2.56. Now, anyone out there notice a little pattern there? I divided by 100 this time. And look at where the decimal ended up. Over here. Okay? It was 256. I divided by 100. And then it seems like I moved the decimal 2 places to the left. And that's exactly what I did. When I multiply by 100, I move the decimal to the right for as many zeros as there are. When I divide by 100, I move the decimal to the left for as many zeros as there are. Okay? So if I have, for example, just to show you, we're getting a lot of good skills here today. For example, if I have 35.9 divided by divided by 10,000. I'm not going to stress this out, and I'm not going to do this the long way. I'm going to say, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. So I have 3.59. I'm going to go 4 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom. Fill in the blanks with zeros. That will equal 359 tenths, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s. 359 100,000s. So when you multiply by powers of 10, you move the decimal to the right for as many places as there are zeros. When you divide by powers of 10, you move the decimal to the left for as many places as there are zeros. All right, last one. Oh, wait a second. Did I? Yeah, I did that. I did that actually, yeah, just the equation method. Let's do it the proportion method. Sorry about that. Got to do the proportion method. Okay, proportion method. 32 of 8 is what number? So n over 100 equals my is the what number? X over of 8. Go ahead and cross multiply. So 32 times 8 is 256, which equals 100 times x, which is 100x. 100 times x. Okay, I got to get rid of the 100. I cancel multiplication with division. So I divide 100 to both sides. So x will equal, remember my little trick here, I'm dividing by 100, so there's 2 zeros. So I'm going to move the original decimal 2 places to the left. So that's going to be 2.56. All right. Last one. 20% of what number is 8? Equation method. 20%, 20 over 100, of times what number? X equals 8. Don't stress out. Remember, this x has a 1 in the denominator. Multiply 20 over 100 times x over 1. You're going to get 20x over 100 equals 8. Remember, that's over 1. Cross multiply. I got 20x equals 800. Cancel multiplication with division, so I divide 20 to both sides. X equals 40. All right, let's do it the proportion method. 20% of what number is 8? Percent over 100 is equals is 8 is attached to the is over of is attached to the what number. Go ahead and cross multiply. 20x equals 800. Divide 20 to both sides. I'm dividing 20 because I'm canceling multiplication. You have 20 times x. I got to divide 20 to both sides to get the x alone. X equals 40. And there you have it. Now you know how to solve for the percent, the part, and the whole. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Hope you learned a lot.